Hello and a warm welcome to Money Majlis. After 2 successful seasons and 60 episodes of Money Majlis, thanks to your support and love, welcome to season 3 of this podcast. Yes, it is season 3, guys. It's been almost 2 years since I recorded episode 1 of season 1 of Money Majlis. Seems only yesterday how time flies. To celebrate this podcast based in Dubai, my adopted city for the past 25 years, we will start this season 3, with a story about Dubai. Dubai's story for the past 3 decades can be told in many ways. Through its skyline, its people, its startups, its sovereign ratings, but perhaps the most powerful lens is its airports. Dubai International Airport, or DXB, is not just where journeys begin and end. It is where Dubai's economic ambition physically meets the world, tens of millions of times a year and counting. Aviation today supports a significant share of Dubai's GDP, jobs and trade flows, and sits at the heart of the Emirates' ambition to double foreign trade and cement its place among the world's top logistics and tourism hubs. On Money Majlis, the focus is always on what these big numbers mean for business models, banking, technology and leadership. DXB, or Dubai International Airport, is a perfect case study, a land-constrained hub that has turned operational excellence, real-time data, and obsessive customer focus into a scalable growth engine, while preparing one of the most ambitious airports of the future at Dubai World Central, Maktoum International, or DWC. In this episode, we unpack how an airport becomes an economic multiplier, a living lab for AI and biometrics, and a front door for a city of more than 200 nationalities. And today, in this first episode of season 3, we go behind the scenes with a person orchestrating it all, Paul Griffiths, on the leadership choices, trade-offs, and human stories that don't show up in the traffic tables. From the macroeconomics of aviation in Dubai to the micro moments that define a great passenger journey to the role of AI, talent, and culture, this is a masterclass on what it takes to run one of the world's most important gateways. But first, an acknowledgement of the wonderful sponsors of season 3 of Money Majlis.
Money Majlis is brought to you by Saxo Bank, the trusted European bank helping you make better investment decisions.
Money Majlis is brought to you by Network International, the leading digital payments technology company in the Middle East and Africa.
Money Majlis is proudly supported by Aqua Now, the premier crypto-as-a-service provider, now building in partnership with the top financial institutions in the Middle East. Discover more at aquanow.com.
Money Majlis is brought to you by E&, a global technology group.
Today's guest is someone whose work almost every listener in Dubai has experienced, even if they have never heard his name announced over a PA system. Paul Griffiths is the Chief Executive Officer of Dubai Airports, responsible for both Dubai International, DXB, the world's busiest airport for international passengers for 11 years running, and Dubai World Central, Al Maktoum International, which is now the site of a multi-billion-dollar expansion to build one of the most ambitious airports of the future anywhere in the world. Paul became the inaugural CEO of Dubai Airports in 2007 and has since overseen milestones that read like aviation history. The opening of Terminal 3 at DXB, the launch of DWC, welcoming DXB's billionth passenger, and leading one of the fastest post-COVID recoveries in global aviation, with traffic surpassing pre-pandemic levels and setting new records. Under his leadership, DXB has handled well over 90 million guests in a single year, with connections to 250 plus destinations across more than 100 countries, while maintaining industry-leading baggage and on-time performance metrics. Before Dubai, Paul held senior roles across the aviation and travel ecosystem, including Managing Director of London Gatwick Airport and Board Director of the Virgin Travel Group. And in an earlier life, was a serious musician and organist, a passion he still actively pursues. That blend of creativity and systems thinking shows up in how he talks about airports, not just as infrastructure, but as experiences, ecosystems, and even living organisms that should behave like sentient cities. In this conversation, we will explore Paul's view of aviation's role in Dubai's economy, the next chapter for DXB and DWC, his leadership and talent philosophy, especially around Emirati talent, and a lighter rapid-fire round at the end. Paul, welcome to Money Majlis. We know each other for many years since we shared the same chairman in our respective organizations, His Highness Sheikh Ahmed bin Saeed Al Maktoum, the amazing leader who chairs both Dubai Airports, your current employer, and Emirates NBD, my ex-employer. Tell me, Paul, what's your favorite story about Sheikh Ahmed? What do you find most remarkable about his leadership style?
I think it's quite amazing how he manages to juggle his different chairmanships and just remain so well informed and able to make really, really strong and bold decisions. And he does this with the level of humility, which is quite impressive. And I find when I have a conversation with him, he's engaging, he's interested, he always listens. One of the things I think you can underestimate is his degree of focus and attention to detail. Sometimes I've wondered whether he's really listened to a conversation I've had, and then a few days later I've heard him repeat on the television or on radio, word for word, everything I've told him. So, he's someone that you must never underestimate. He's an incredible human being. And I think I can say that, one of the most amazing conversations I had with him was on my first day when I arrived in Dubai. I walked into his office and said, "Good morning, Your Highness, I'm here. What would you like me to do?" And he said, "Paul, just one thing, never constrain the growth of aviation in Dubai." And it's great to have a single KPI because you know very, very instinctively whether you're succeeding or failing if it's just one measure. And we've tried very, very hard in the last 19 years that I have been in the role to make sure that we deliver that promise of never constraining the growth in aviation.
That's a great segue, Paul, to my first question, which is about the big picture for aviation in Dubai. When you look at Dubai's economic story today, from GDP growth to trade and tourism, how central is aviation in your mind? Is Dubai still at heart, quote unquote, an airport with a city attached, or has that equation evolved?
That's a real chicken and egg question. And I think the answer is the city wouldn't exist without the airport, and the airport wouldn't exist without the city because, as you know, this is a very young country.
Yeah.
And the UAE was formed in 1971 and quickly wanted to establish in a few decades what other cities had taken literally hundreds of years to establish themselves, and that is one of the world's great cities. And I think the incredible story of Dubai demonstrates that single-mindedness to put Dubai on the map in a way that no other city has achieved in that short period of time. And I think, the leadership of Dubai, right from the formation of the UAE in 1971, saw that connections with the rest of the world was the essential way of creating that vision for the city. So having a thriving airport and an aviation community and some thriving airlines serving that airport was the way to do it. So we now have created the world's largest intercontinental hub. 95.2 million guests went through our doors during the course of 2025.
Incredible.
Which is, significantly far away next to the next airport, which is Heathrow, as the number 2. So it's quite incredible how the single-minded focus on developing the aviation sector has led to the success of the city and vice versa. One of the most amazing statistics is by now we expected the airport traffic to outgrow the number of visitor arrivals by a significant factor. It's just normally what happens in large hub airports. But the demand for the city has really been very, very strong. In fact, the majority of customers that come through the airport are actually visiting Dubai. They're not flying on to other places. And that changes a little bit between summer and winter. In the winter, it's sort of 55% are visiting Dubai, 45% are transiting, going on to somewhere else. And that reverses during the summer months when obviously a lot of people travel to other parts of the world. So the whole phenomenon of Dubai reflects, I think, that symbiotic relationship between the airport and the city.
So there is evidence of hard economic impact, whether it's GDP, job growth, or Dubai's competitiveness, let's say, as a global business hub to the traffic numbers we talked about.
Absolutely. And if you look at the study conducted by Oxford Economics, the estimate was that the aviation sector in Dubai contributed $37.3 billion to Dubai's GDP, which is about 27% of the total. And the support of jobs in the wider economy in the same year was estimated at 630,000. And if you look at the growth prospects for the future, by 2030, aviation's contribution is forecast to reach $53.3 billion, and by which time the GDP contribution will have grown by 5 percentage points to 32% of GDP. And employment in the aviation sector, supported by the aviation sector as well, is likely to grow to about 816,000. So these are incredible statistics,
Indeed,
which are fully supported by the historic growth of the aviation sector and the contribution to GDP.
Congratulations, Paul. But when you sit with policymakers, what are some of the big strategic conversations that you're having around the next decade of aviation-driven growth?
Well, I think the first thing, obviously, the focus is on infrastructure to try and see what's possible beyond the limited lifespan we've got remaining at DXB. By 2031, we're expected to accommodate something like 115 million guests during the course of that year, which is an incredible number when you consider the actual infrastructure that we have at DXB is relatively small compared to some other airports. There are much larger airports by landmass with much smaller throughput numbers of total guests. So it's going to be quite a struggle to get to that, but we are fully ready and expecting not just to achieve those numbers, but we're also trying to make absolutely sure that the service levels we deliver to that number of passengers do not deteriorate from where we are today. There's a lot of effort going in, lots of technology being developed, lot of focus on training and customer service, and a lot of efforts into our One DXB program to make sure that every touch point that our customers are likely to be able to interact with during the course of their journey through the airport, they receive a consistently high level of care and attention.
Talking of numbers, Paul, tourism is often the headline, but the cargo side has also grown strongly. How important is freight and logistics to Dubai's value proposition? And what are you doing to strengthen that side of the business?
Well, obviously, our geocentric location here in Dubai is incredibly important, not just for passenger traffic, but it's also for cargo. And also the two airports in Dubai handle currently about 3 million tons of cargo annually. This puts Dubai amongst the world's top cargo hubs. And at DWC, the cargo is designed in from day one. In fact, when we opened the airport in 2010, it was initially for cargo only, and we moved quite a lot of cargo traffic out of DXB to make way for more passenger-orientated traffic. And the planned capacity at DWC is actually going to be about 4 times the amount of current cargo capacity. So we're anticipating growth to about 12 million tons annually. And the scale and integration of that traffic will be completely unique. It will be the world's greatest cargo hub as well as the world's greatest passenger hub.
Now, Dubai's resident population at last count was about 4 million, or just above 4 million. And the city is positioning itself as a home base for global talent. How does a demographic and talent story shape your planning, let's say in terms of route development with the airlines to capacity and the city airport integration?
It does drive a significant part of our thinking, particularly for our service philosophy and service design, because if you look at the changing demographics, and we've observed that over the last 15 years, how our customer demographics have shifted, and actually the younger demographic, which is obviously going to form the bulk of our customer base in the future wants different things compared to the older customer base. I mean, fast Wi-Fi, frequent no-fuss connections to all corners of the globe. They want, I think, an uncomplicated journey, and their affinity with branded merchandise is changing significantly. So our retail offer will have to be amended to fit that passenger demographic. So it's very interesting monitoring that. And we've got several what we call customer personas, which we have devised based on the research we've done amongst our customer base to make sure that we are serving them better. And I think, a more modern, more simplistic view of the customer journey to take out all the friction points in a journey is what people are looking for. They don't want to stop and fuss and participate in processes that are there for the convenience of the airport operator. That's why we're investing very heavily in AI and associated technologies to eliminate those as much as we possibly can, because the frictionless experience where the airport is all about flow until you get to the lounge and restaurant offering, where it shifts to being all about dwell, comfort, hospitality and quality of service. So I think what we're doing is respecting what people value most, and that is their time. And we're not constraining people by having to put them through processes which are there for the convenience of the airlines and the airport rather than the convenience of the customer.
Very true. Paul, you joked earlier that the only KPI that Sheikh Ahmed gave you on day one is never constrain the growth of aviation. How do you balance that mandate with concerns around congestion, community impact and sustainability that other global hubs seem to struggle with?
Well, I think we benefit hugely from having a no-nonsense leadership in Dubai. I mean, it's very, very noticeable that anything that stands in the way of the ambition of Dubai's growth and excellence as a global city is not considered seriously. And the timescales it takes to get approval for projects and funding for projects here is lightning fast. When you consider in cities like like London, it took, I think, 10 years to get planning consent to build a new terminal at Heathrow, and then 6 years to construct it. We commission, design, execute and open infrastructure in an absolute fraction of that time. And we don't have all the planning constraints and the funding challenges that a lot of other airports have. So it's been incredibly impressive how we've been able to grow from 30 million customer capacity when I arrived in 2007, and we are likely to hit something close to 100 million during the course of 2026. So to have been able to grow at that rate with the investment in technology and infrastructure that we've been able to sustain is an incredible testament to the far-reaching and confident approach I think that leadership are attaching to the role of the aviation sector in growing the GDP here in Dubai.
100 million passengers, Paul. No wonder you are labeled the Willy Wonka of aviation. Now tell me, what strategic shifts do you believe, from your perspective, will define the next decade of global aviation globally? And how is Dubai positioning itself to stay ahead?
Well, I think, first of all, I fundamentally disagree with a lot of people around the world who think that the airport business is fundamentally about managing infrastructure. I think the infrastructure is a tool to do the job. It's not the end game in itself. To me, we should never forget that every single customer that's going through the airport is paying the wages of those who are dependent on the aviation sector for their livelihood. Correct. And we need to treat them as the most valuable people in our lives as they undertake their journeys. And I have quite an emotional commitment to that, because I remember as a small boy sitting on the roof of my father's car near Heathrow watching the jets take off and marveling that those aircraft weighing, tens of tons of metal and glass and steel. I mean, it was unbelievable how something like that could leave the ground, and that fascination stayed with me. And I do remember my first flight, and I remember looking at the aeroplane as I got close and thought this was just a miracle, that this incredible behemoth could actually leave the ground and transport people in a couple of hours, thousands of miles away. And I think that romance deep-seated in my heart about the approach to travel has never left me, and that's why I look at our product as a very much human-based product. So being orientated around the reassurance that's necessary for our customers during what can be quite a stressful journey across the world for all sorts of different reasons is what we're all about. It's all about hospitality. I think the big strategic shift in aviation will actually be quite an interesting one, because what we're seeing now is the growth in capability of different aircraft types. And we're now seeing smaller aircraft, narrow-bodied aircraft with capacities of less than 200 passengers able to now fly for, say, 9 hours at a time. And if you think about it, what that's doing is it's bringing into the range of DXB so many cities which have small enough populations to support a narrow-bodied aeroplane, but not a large enough population to support a wide-bodied aeroplane. So that's going to open up a huge raft of secondary cities. And currently at the moment, I think we've got about 240 different cities that you can get to directly from DXB. I think that will grow over the next decade or so to about 600. And that will make us the most connected airport on the planet by several measures ahead of the competition. So it's going to be a very exciting decade where you will be able to use Dubai as a connecting hub between all sorts of secondary cities across the world in Europe and Asia and Africa. And it's going to be an incredible decade for the growth of long-haul travel on a smaller scale.
That's amazing. Paul, you spoke there about hospitality over infrastructure. If a listener lands at DXB tomorrow, what are some of the most important changes they would feel versus, let's say, 5 years back?
Well, first of all, I hope that our frontline service team will treat them as individuals. I think one of the secrets in any hospitality business, where it be airlines, hotels or airports, is you have got to treat every single customer, despite the fact that they may be presenting themselves to you in their millions, as an individual with needs that are different to everyone else. So being able to serve the customer in a way that's intimate and relevant to that customer's need, I think is probably the most important feature. I sometimes get the feeling when I travel through other airports that the various people involved in the operation are so disconnected from the needs of the customer that they have absolutely no relationship with them and they have no interest in their particular needs. And it really makes me sad when I go through an airport where I think that, you can tell the palpable difference when someone's genuinely interested in whether you are having a good journey or not. And I hope that that's the differentiator that makes DXB feel so much more friendly and orientated towards their needs than other airports.
Now, DXB is famously land constrained, yet you keep adding capacity without pouring more concrete by using, I guess, technology and process redesign. Can you walk us through a couple of examples that are meaningfully increased throughput?
Absolutely. We worked out a long time ago, and it was sort of forced by the shortage of land that we have at DXB. We're hemmed in on all four sides. There's no room to build another runway or more terminals. And we realized that the only way to increase capacity was to increase the throughput through the existing infrastructure. And this makes sense from so many perspectives, because if you can deploy technology which will help our customers through the airport in a far shorter space of time, you've done so many positive things. The first thing is, of course, you've taken away all of the needlessly long and extended separate processes that people have to go through at an airport, thereby saving that most precious commodity of time. So if you get people through the airport in half the time, the correlation of that is you can get double the number of people in the same time. So you have a massive increase in capacity by halving the processing time, and you have had to spend no money in expensive infrastructure. And over the last 10 years, we've grown by 20% without a single increase in the portfolio of infrastructure that we have to operate DXB. And I think that makes a lot of sense. And in the future, you see, instead of pouring vast, millions of square meters of concrete and putting the steel and glass in, which is incredibly expensive, and of course infrastructure, the larger it is, costs more to operate. I think if we have a fairly modest infrastructure, but we concentrate on getting our customers through in maybe a quarter of the time that they get through most airports, the great thing about that is the customer is in a much better frame of mind if you've been able to whiz through the airport in no time at all. And of course, they have more time to dwell in our shops, restaurants, bars and lounges, which means hopefully they'll be in a better frame of mind to spend more money, and they'll have more time to do it. So it's a win-win-win on so many different fronts. I'm amazed that it's taken the airport industry such a long time to figure that out.
100%. You described preparing DXB for recovery after COVID like a coiled spring, you said, ready to bounce back as soon as restrictions lifted. Paul, what did you get right in that period that other airports could learn from, especially around data, scenario planning, frontline engagement? What did you do differently?
I think it was Winston Churchill who said, never waste a good crisis. And I think, we looked around the business during COVID when our traffic just fell off a cliff. I mean, in May 2020, during the entire month, we had the same number of customers through DXB as we had in May 2019 in 4 hours. So that gave you the scale of the decay of the business. And I think the thing is that we used that time to make some bold decisions. We actually reduced our total manpower by about 1,000. We didn't lay them all off. Fortunately, we found jobs for them in some of our service partners, and we actually restructured so many contracts to create very proactive partnerships, as well as reducing a huge amount out of our cost base. So we used the crisis to totally re-engineer our business and make some tough decisions. And sometimes in a crisis, the justification for making tough decisions is easier than when times are good, when people say, well, you don't need to do that. Actually, I've always believed that you should shape a business and make it economically sustainable for a crisis so that you don't have to take in so much pain. A lot of businesses, when things bounce back, add a lot of cost, add a lot of people, add a lot of product, and sometimes that makes them less agile and capable of coping with a downturn. And we still live in a cycle of boom and bust. Maybe we're getting more intelligent about managing that boom and bust, but it's still a cycle. The other thing I think during COVID is, and this is I think a shortcoming of the way humanity thinks about things, when you go into a crisis, for some reason, there is that sort of disbelief that things will ever get back to where they were. But I had the absolute confidence, as did Sheikh Ahmed and many other leaders in the aviation sector, that this was merely a temporary blip. We would get back very quickly to where we were before, and we would do it very, very quickly indeed. So I knew that coiled spring and that hockey stick recovery was very, very likely to happen. The only thing we didn't know was quite when it would happen. So we were very, very careful not to make any decisions which would mean that our recovery was likely to be impeded or made too slow. And I think the problem is across the business, if you look to other sectors, there were so many people who took decisions as though the aviation industry was never going to recover. And there are some today that are still trying to recover from the effects of the pandemic. So I think, being ready for recovery, but nevertheless still going to the gym to get fit for recovery was something that business was very, very engaged in doing. And that meant that as soon as things started to improve and we came out of the second lockdown, we recovered far, far faster. I also have to acknowledge that the government's decision to make sure that the vaccination of its citizens here was so much quicker than anywhere else, and we got to 100% very, very quickly indeed. I think that portrayed a vote of confidence in Dubai that the travelling public really, really latched onto, and visitor numbers really went through the roof as soon as we reopened. And I also believe that, that was a great policy, because we were able to demonstrate to people that, if you wanted to come anywhere that's got it right and has got the healthcare, has got the security of its citizens uppermost in its mind, it was Dubai at that time. So it was an incredible experience. It was a very difficult time for a lot of things, but I think as soon as the signs of recovery were there, we were ready, and we responded very, very quickly indeed to get back up to full strength in a matter of weeks.
So COVID was actually a game changer for Dubai as a city and Dubai as an airport.
That's absolutely right. It was definitely a game changer for Dubai airports and the whole aviation sector. And I think, now we look back and we think that, Dubai before the pandemic and Dubai after the pandemic were very different. We are a much stronger, bolder, much greater force for good, I think, in the world, and with an incredibly strong aviation sector as well. So it's been a very, very interesting learning cycle for so many people, one that I probably wouldn't want to repeat if I had the choice.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree more. Paul, AI is the buzzword of the decade, but you're actually deploying it in very real operational context in Dubai airports. Tell me, where is AI already at work across Dubai airports today, and what excites you most about where AI can take the airport experience over the next 5 years?
It's very interesting because, you see, I have a technical background, and in fact I once run my own software company, and we did a lot of development of management information specifically for the aviation industry, and that's how I got into Virgin Atlantic, actually, through the technical route. And I'm very, very excited about technology. You could call me a geek if you like. I'm definitely a geek, and I absolutely love not just the technology for technology's sake, but when it is applied and it can change the world. I mean, I think Steve Jobs introducing the iPhone was such a game changer, not just for technology, but for lifestyle and how it's made, our lives totally different over a period of time, and I think the application of AI will be similarly groundbreaking. Now, if you think about it, what AI can do, it can broaden the capability of the human mind. We have a limited mental capacity to absorb a number of inputs to be able to make sense of them at one time. And if you think about an airport, there are so many moving parts. You've got aircraft, as soon as they emerge on the radar of ATC, then they're talked down onto the ground, then they have to park, then they have to be turned round, they have to have fuel and catering and customers and engineering and maintenance, and all sorts of things have to happen to them. Now, I think the thing is, if you rely on humans to orchestrate that and plan it, that is going to be limited because we can't assimilate all of the thousands of parameters that every single aircraft turnaround at an airport needs to be optimal. But AI, by gathering the data from all of the disparate systems that are involved in an aircraft arrival and departure, and by using sophisticated video analytics, we can on the ground measure exactly what's happening from every stakeholder's perspective during an aircraft turnaround. What gets measured gets optimized and done. So using that data, we can determine how an aircraft turnaround has performed against what we believe to be the most efficient and effective way of doing it, and therefore give the feedback to all the different parties involved in it in order to improve their levels of performance. I mean, I look at the Formula One sport and think that, if you look at how pit stops of Formula One racing cars used to take 40 seconds plus not too many decades ago, and now through relentless engineering of the processes involved, those turnarounds are done, in less than 3 seconds. It's quite amazing. And I believe that we won't ever get aircraft turnarounds to less than 3 seconds, but if we can get a 20 to 50% improvement, you're getting, an aircraft that can be worth up to $500 million turn round quickly and out and flying again, because when it's in the air it's earning revenue, when it's on the ground it's not. So I think the efficiencies that AI will bring us will be so enormous. But of course there are other efficiencies and other service improvements that AI will bring. As I mentioned earlier, if we can start to recognize customers at the earliest point of contact without knowing their identities or sharing their identities or invading their privacy in any way, we can track them through the airport. So if they are late to gate or they are at a point in the airport where they're getting a bit tight on the departure of their aeroplane, we can actually remind them. If they go and make a transaction in a shop, as we know which flight they're on and we know how far they are from the gate, the shop assistant can calmly say, Mr. Smith, your flight is going from gate A13. That's about a 20-minute journey away. If you go now, you'll have about 10 minutes to spare. That sort of intelligent information delivered in a very friendly way will save time, it'll improve performance, and it will reduce the trauma of people missing flights, which unfortunately happens far more often than you'd ever believe.
And how far do you think this is in reality? What you just described?
We're very close. We've now equipped all of our aircraft stand with the necessary video analytics to be able to gather the data and optimize the aircraft turnarounds I've described. For some years now, we've been able to track the service performance within our terminals. So I can tell you right now from an app on my phone how many people are in the terminals, what sort of service level they're receiving, and whether there are any interruptions in the service flow in any area, whether it's check-in, immigration, security, customs. We know exactly what's going on by the second, and therefore we can predict and eliminate any difficulties in service delivery. For example, if you allow a queue to build up and then you send resources to be able to try and deal with the service problem that you're creating, you'll never clear that queue. If we can actually predict how many customers are coming through a set point in the airport ahead of time, we can deploy the necessary resources to make sure a queue never builds up. And that's why I think we've managed to create a pretty frictionless and queueless airport, and that is our absolute stated desire. You should never ever have to queue at DXB. I know we don't get it right 100% of the time, but we're working very, very hard to get it right down to the barest minimum.
Amazing. Paul, this is a good time to tell our listeners about the social impact objective of this podcast. Most profits from Money Majlis go to compelling social causes from across the world. Every guest on this podcast gets a $1,000 Money Majlis gift card that can be redeemed for one of the carefully selected 6 charities. For Season 3, the charities are Dubai Cares, Red Crescent, Educate Girls, Save the Children, World Wildlife Fund, and the Rudy A. Menon Foundation for Cancer Research. Paul, you've chosen to give your gift card to Red Crescent. Thank you. Every listener of this show can also get to redeem a free gift card on my website, www.moneymajlis.com. So please visit my website and make a difference to someone somewhere. See you after this short commercial break.
In Money Majlis, we talk about making informed money decisions. With Saxo Bank, you get access to global markets from a single advanced trading platform. Stocks, ETFs, Forex, CFDs, commodities, and more. With research and tools right there in the platform, it's easier to make sense of what's moving the markets. Learn more at home.saxo.me.
Money Majlis is brought to you by Network International, the Middle East, and Africa's digital payments champion. We make business happen and economies prosper by simplifying commerce and payments. Trusted by over 250 banks. fintechs and telcos, and 130,000 merchants in over 50 countries, bringing you tomorrow's payment solutions today.
The financial world is changing fast. Institutions need to meet the growing client demand for crypto financial services, but they need a battle-tested platform to build upon.
AquaNow is a leading crypto financial services platform, powering incumbent institutions to launch crypto brokerage, payments, and remittance services for their clients, securely and at scale.
Be part of the transformation. Visit aquanow.com today.
The end touches your life.
in more ways than you can imagine.
You want more tech,
More speed.
more convenience,
more entertainment.
more business solutions,
Ian gives you all that.
and so much more. The end. Go for more.
Welcome back. We are talking today to Paul Griffiths, the inimitable CEO of Dubai Airports. Paul is a unique leader, part high-level strategist, part tech futurist, and part classically trained musician with a passion for high-speed mechanics. Shifting gear, Paul, sustainability is now a board-level topic for every airport. Where does Dubai Airport sit on decarbonization? Whether it's energy use and ground operations, whether it's working with airlines and partners for greener aviation, what tangible targets have you set?
Well, I think first of all, you have to look at the statistics on sustainability to be motivated to do something about it. And if you look at the rise in temperature of the globe, it's really quite alarming how quickly that change is happening. And whether you believe the evidence or not, climate change is here, and it's something that we have to tackle as an emergency. I'm very passionate about it. We're doing all sorts of things. We're putting thousands of PV panels on rooftops all over the airport to generate a substantial amount of our electricity usage from solar energy. We're doing all sorts of things. We've changed literally hundreds of thousands of light bulbs to use low energy light bulbs. We've put more intelligent control systems into our air conditioning to make them more effective and efficient. We're now processing waste in a much more efficient way and cutting down on waste. We removed all single-use plastics from the airport some years ago. But the biggest difference I think we'll be able to make over the next few decades is going to be the transition away from Jet A1, which is the predominant source of fuel for aircraft, to a sustainable aviation fuel that's grown from different feedstocks. And I'm personally very deeply involved in this on a global scale. And the idea is that we know for the next 20 to 30 years, jet aviation is going to remain the sole power source for long-haul airliners and probably short-haul airliners as well. So a drop in fuel that's molecularly equivalent to Jet A1 is the answer. And what we've got to do is encourage this to be produced at significant scale to be able to substitute for Jet A1. The problem is actually the size of the problem is quite daunting. If you look across the global energy supply chain, jet aviation fuel is consumed at a rate of over 1 million tons per day, and it grew by 66,000 tons a day last year alone. So the demand is going up, and the supply of sustainable aviation fuel, it doesn't even scratch the surface. I think in 2025 we produced enough sustainable aviation fuel globally to last in the fuel hydrant system for about 40 hours. So we're nowhere near where we need to be. Now, the great future, I think, of sustainable aviation fuel is that it can be made from different feedstocks. The principle is that you use production methods that harness carbon from various sources, be it industrial waste, be it from feedstocks that you grow from different sources, and that carbon capture during the method of production means that you can get a fuel that when it's burnt again releases carbon into the atmosphere, but the carbon has been captured in the first place, so the net carbon emission is significantly reduced from burning oil-based product. Now, the thing is, you see, what we have to do is solve the cycle at the moment where there isn't sufficient demand because the price differential is too high. And what we absolutely need to do is stimulate production by subsidizing the cost of sustainable aviation fuel, which is about 4 to 5 times more expensive than conventional jet A1. And if we can get that produced on an industrial scale and injected into the fuel hydrants of airports around the world, that will make a significant contribution to reducing the carbon footprint of aviation. What it needs is industrialization at scale and a broadening of the feedstock potential of different industries. For example, you can make bioethanol from the byproduct of things like metal smelting, you know, aluminium production, steel production. You can also make it from industrial waste. You can make it from feedstocks that you can grow either on land or at sea. And if we can broaden that and produce bioethanol, which can then be distilled into sustainable aviation fuel, we do stand a chance of getting both the production at scale and the unit cost reduced, which will then start to provide the momentum we need to mix a much higher percentage of sustainable aviation fuel into the aviation fuel supply. We're at the early stages, but I think, you know, by a call to action to industry at large, we can escalate this production and shorten the time necessary to move to a much more sustainable aviation future.
That's very inspiring, I must say. Paul, let's now move to the Al Maktoum International Airport, DWC, and its major expansion. When people hear the headline about expansion of Dubai airports, especially Al Maktoum, they imagine another bigger DXB. You've talked instead about a network of smart, human-scale terminals and a sentient airport that behaves like a living city. Paint us a picture. What would a traveler, say, in 2035 feel and notice at DWC that is impossible today?
I believe that the biggest single differentiating factor is people will not feel that they're in an airport. They'll feel they are in a high-quality, service-orientated environment that uses all sorts of natural habitats to make people feel calm and collected. The level of service, the orientation around the dwell space being high-quality lounges, the offer of shopping experiences, the sort of dining and entertainment options that people will have will be so far removed from any airport that they've imagined or experienced today. And I think, you know, gone will be things like check-in, immigration, passport control, and also security. They will all be operated, but they'll be so discreet and they will be so enabled by technologies that both exist today and some that we're developing for the future, that the focus will be on the guest experience and speeding people through the airport in the most unfussy, comfortable, calm and luxurious way. And I think that will be the departure from the current airport design. At the moment, you know, airports are designed along very conventional and old-fashioned lines of preserving the current status quo of check-in, immigration, security, retail, and all of those things being, you know, sequential stages of the journey which take up far too much time. We want to eliminate all the unnecessary processes and actually use the airport as a much more flexible space to create capacity and flow that is not existing in any airports of today.
Amazing. Tell us, Paul, how do DXB and DWC fit together strategically over the next 10 to 15 years? Is it a gradual migration story? Is it a dual hub model or something more nuanced?
Well, I think first of all, when we get to about 115 million, we believe that's about the physical limit of DXB because we're constrained by the two runways. The two runways are not far enough apart to be able to operate it and be operated completely independently. So we have a capacity restriction of about 70 movements an hour total. So we won't be able to put many more customers through DXB. So we have to move to Maktoum International for phase 2. So I think the thing is that the transition will have to be very carefully orchestrated. It may take some time. I don't think it can be accomplished overnight. We may have to take a phased approach to move gradually the traffic from DXB to DWC. But when we moved into Terminal 3 at DXB, when we only had Terminals 1 and 2, we actually phased that over a period of weeks, but we accelerated it because it went extremely smoothly. We're hoping that if we set a target to make the transition between DXB and DWC, that we'll be able to accelerate that as well. So we're going to obviously plan it like a military operation. But I think post the full transition to DWC, the government will have to look at how the two airports are placed relative to each other, and I would suggest that having such a large airport at DWC, trying to operate that as well as DXB, there won't be the need to do that because you've consolidated every part of the operation under one roof at DWC, and therefore the opportunity to redevelop DXB and all the real estate around it, because of course the area around Garhoud and Festival City is constrained by the presence of the airport because there's a height limitation.
Correct.
So if we eliminate that by making that area aviation free, you could make it high rise. It's very valuable land. Hopefully we can create some sort of park and great living space, perhaps a little bit of a tribute to the great aviation story that took place at DXB. I'd be a bit sad to lose the footprint of DXB completely, but I think the future is all about putting 260 million people through DWC Phase 2, which will be the largest aviation enterprise on the planet, and consolidating everything there will make all of those 600 cities I spoke about earlier reachable from the world's greatest and largest aviation hub.
Incredible. Paul, you led Dubai Airport since 2007. In corporate terms, that's several lifetimes. What are the 2 or 3 leadership principles that have stayed constant for you through expansion, through crisis, and now this new growth phase?
I think, first of all, never accept the status quo. You never get comfortable that you're doing everything in the right possible way. And I think the most important thing is don't get overconfident that you always know all the answers. You don't know all the answers. There are people, I spend a lot of time with what we call our youth council, and these are people fresh out of university that are just starting their careers. And the energy and the vitality and the difference in the way they approach life is a stark lesson for some of us older people. And I think, always being in the frame of mind to accept new ideas and new levels of innovation is incredibly important. And I think, I always say to the people that I'm surrounded with at DXB, I'm not afraid to admit that I don't know all the answers. And actually giving people the confidence to speak up and make a contribution is incredibly important. Because if you set out to be a bit of an island and you always convey that you have the answer, I think you miss a trick and you disempower the people that work for you. I'm always very grateful to be challenged by the people that work for us and the people with whom we interact, because sometimes you'll get a gem of an idea coming from quite a sort of humble beginning that you can adopt. And I think that's the most important thing. If you hire good people, make sure that you're hiring at the highest possible level of capability. Do not be threatened by anyone, because quite honestly, it is not a crime to aspire to be the least intelligent person in the room. Hire above the threshold that as high as you can, and then give those people the acknowledgement and respect of making a contribution and not shouting them down. That's been so important, and it's paid dividends. The capability that we've been able to assemble in our team by taking that approach and growing our own talent has been a game changer.
Very well said. One consistent theme in your interviews, Paul, is respect for the front line, the thousands of people who actually deliver the airport experience. How do you keep such a large, such a complex workforce aligned, energized, and customer obsessed, especially when you don't meet many of them?
Well, I've spent the last 2 days actually going around the airport. I've been to our operations team. I've been to, our fire service. I've been to all our guest experience ambassadors. And I've said to them, look, I could have sent you an email thanking you for your absolutely amazing performance during the course of last year. I could have done a video link. I could have done all sorts of things. But I decided that I couldn't convey the emotional sincerity of thanking them from the bottom of my heart for doing such a great job unless I took the time to actually go and see them personally. So I've been all around the airport over the last couple of days, several different places, to say thank you personally to, a few thousand people, very, very short of the total 100,000 people that we've got working at DXB at any one time. But I do believe keeping in touch with the front line and being personal about it is a really, really important thing. And we conduct a number of training sessions where we cycle through training days that we organize off-site, thousands of people, and my chiefs and myself, we go there and we spend a lot of time interacting with them and, playing some fun games, telling them about the strategy and the hopes and desires for the future of DXB and DWC. And they really appreciate taking the time. And I think keeping those lines of communication between the front line, which do all the heavy lifting in terms of our customer experience, and the management of DXB is something that I have maintained. When I arrived in 2007, the total customer throughput through DXB was about 32 million customers every year. Last year, 2025, we got that to 95.2 million. So we've tripled the amount of customers we now handle within largely the same physical footprint at DXB. The other amazing statistic is when I arrived, we had 3,550 employees for 32 million customers. We now have 1,700 employees for 92.5 million customers. And that has been achieved through investment in processes, systems, technology, but most of all people. We now have witnessed a complete transformation in the customer ethos and the attitude from our employees. And that's because we've captured them young and we haven't given them jobs. We've introduced them to a career path that they can follow. And a lot of the leadership in my team, 78% of my leadership team are now proud Emiratis that we've taken from university, offered them apprenticeships, trained them up in different disciplines, and now they're, after being promoted several times, they're now leaders of the business. And I think that sort of cultural transformation is one of the great legacies of which I think I'll be justifiably, hopefully proud.
Absolutely. But talking about attitudes, Paul, culture at an airport is tricky. You have airport staff, airlines, immigration, security, retailers, all with different attitudes, different employers, different incentives. What have you found works in creating one airport, one team, rather than a collection of silos?
I think you mentioned earlier that, one of the great advantages of the aviation sector here is that the common chairman across every enterprise within the aviation sector and many other sectors is my chairman, His Highness Sheikh Ahmed bin Saeed Al Maktoum. And the fact that we know what the leadership in this city is always demanding of us, and that is to be number one in the world for everything. Number two is not something that's acceptable, I think, in their minds. So it's very, very easy to go and ask anyone associated in the aviation sector what the goal is, and that is to be number one in everything. And I think it's very, very easy, therefore, to get a common attitude and a common approach. And it's amazing, my tour around the airport in the last few days has not just been employees of Dubai airports. It's been all of our stakeholders, police, customs, immigration, security, airlines, ground handling agents, the fire service. Everyone knows what the objective is, and that is to be number one in the world. And they are pursuing their own ideas of investing in technology and process and people to create that environment. We have a training program which we've opened to all of the employees of the aviation sector across Dubai called One DXB. And that is that whoever you work for, whatever you do, at whatever level you operate, we are all moving in the same direction to create the same outcome. And the tagline of this program is many hearts, one beat.
Amazing.
And I think that really communicates very effectively what we're all about. And we have Chairman Awards twice a year. We just had our Chairman Awards earlier in the week. And that is to actually name and single out people who've gone the extra mile in delivering great customer service and who have made that whole ethos of having one approach to every customer a living, breathing, enterprise. And that's great. I was with the police commander at the airport this morning, talking to him about what a fantastic relationship we have with our police. I think, in other jurisdictions, the police are held with a little bit of fear. We certainly have the respect for them here, but we don't have the fear because they are on our side, doing a great job alongside all of our staff and delivering fantastic customer service. And it's an incredible engine. I don't think it's capable of being copied elsewhere. And lots of other airports come to see what we do. And they always ask the same thing. How come you've managed to persuade so many people to, orientate their initiative in exactly the right direction? And we say it's the leadership of Dubai, it's the leadership of all the aviation enterprises, and everyone knows exactly what's expected of them. And that is creating not just the largest airport in the world, but the best customer service. So what I say, we want to be the biggest and we want to be the best. And if you combine those two, we want to be the greatest airport in the world.
Very well said. Paul, your original training was not in engineering or in finance, but in music. You're an accomplished organist, and you talked about it earlier. How has your musical background influenced the way you lead, you solve problems, or think about complex systems like airports?
Well, it's very interesting. When you're a musician, and especially if you're a musician that plays with other musicians in an orchestra, the thing you have to do is you have to both concentrate on the technical accomplishment of playing the instrument, but you have to be so aware of what's going on around you. And you have to follow the direction of the leader of the orchestra and the conductor. And I particularly love orchestral playing, where I'm playing harpsichord or piano or organ in a big orchestral piece. And the great thing about that, it gives you a level of awareness to be able to coordinate a lot of disparate moving parts and to produce a unity of direction and a unity of sound that creates great beauty. And I think that's a great analysis of how an airport works. You've got so many moving parts that on their own would sound, would actually perform a very, very different function, but harmonizing together under a single sort of direction of a particular product you're trying to create, that is a composition of humanity and infrastructure and systems and process. That's very like an orchestra producing a sound. You may have 100 players, but actually all you hear is one sound. We may have, 100,000 staff, but what we're producing is one particular approach which helps the entire enterprise of DXB, deliver great customer service.
Amazing. You work closely, Paul, with Sir Richard Branson at Virgin. What is the single most unconventional piece of business advice he ever gave you?
I recall when I was very fortunate during my time with Richard to be invited to spend some time with him on his island in the Caribbean, in the Virgin Islands. Yeah, it was great, actually. And I remember, after breakfast, when everyone was going off sailing or playing tennis, he would then say, "Oh, Paul, can we sit down and just talk about a few things?" And I spent a lot of time one-to-one with him, and we had a great relationship. Still do, actually. Whenever he comes through Dubai, we always have dinner, and it's just wonderful seeing him. And one day, my son, Edward, was going to play tennis, and he walked all the way from the house to the tennis courts, which is quite a long way. And on the way back, he sort of passed by where Richard and I were talking. And Richard said, "Edward, you had a good good time down at the tennis court? And he said, yes, I did, thank you. And he said, have you played tennis much? And he said, no, this was my first game. Did you enjoy it? Yeah, very much, And I said, did you win? Well, no. And he said, yeah, but come on, just keep going every day. And before you go home, I am honestly believe you are going to win a game. And, he walked off and had a sort of spring in his step. And Richard said to me, that's the biggest gift we can give our children, the confidence that they can do things. And I remembered that. And I just think if you build someone up when they've done something good or they're struggling to do something good, and you give them the confidence and the belief that they can do it, it's just so empowering, and it gives people the ability. A lot of people don't achieve things because they give up too soon. They have the ability, but they just don't have the confidence to achieve an outcome. And I've always remembered that, and I've always tried to espouse that in my leadership style and the way that I try and encourage people to be the best they can be. And also, just don't give up too early. Richard Branson is an absolutely classic example of someone who's had an idea that everyone has said that will never work, but he's never believed them. He's always carried on. And I think that's a really, really good lesson. Don't give up too soon and have the confidence that you can achieve what you set out to do.
That's super. Paul, my last serious question. You're known for your passion for cars and bikes and the collection you've built over the years. If you had to pick one favorite from the garage and one ultimate dream machine that you still don't own, what would they be respectively?
I'm fascinated by engineering, and I just remember, and I'm fascinated by all forms of transport, planes, trains, automobiles. Anything that moves like that, I've always been fascinated. That's why I'm so passionate about aviation. I remember when I was 16 in the UK, and I persuaded my father to lend me the money to buy my first little motorcycle, a 49cc moped, and the sense of freedom it gave me.
Yep.
And I remember doing 50 miles on it in my first evening of owning it in August, I think 1974 it was. And it just gave me the sense of liberation that I have never felt in any way since. So my passion for two wheels as well as four wheels has sort of continued. And I'm also fascinated by the engineering in some of these amazing machines and the difference in the approach by different manufacturers. And so, I've got a huge collection of different bikes from Italy, bikes from Japan. I mean, I particularly like the Kawasaki two-stroke triples from the 1970s. I love the Ducati Italian bevel twins from the 1970s, And I think, the amazing engineering in some of the cars I've got is quite incredible. I used to race Porsches in the late 90s and really enjoyed that. And I still have a passion for different things. I think Italy has got a particular ability to combine artistic style and engineering together, and I'm amazed at their industrial output from the north of Italy across many different manufacturers. So there's all sorts of things. It'd be really difficult to name just one. I mean, I've named a couple that I really like.
Paul, I have one last question. Actually, one more last question. When you eventually step away from the CEO role, what would you like most people, your team, your partners, and travelers who never knew your name, to say what this was different because Paul was here? What would that be?
I think the first thing would be that, we treat every single customer as a guest and as someone that feels really happy when they go through the airport. That's on the sort of customer level. But I think my single legacy would be that I arrived as an expatriate at an airport where the major airline had ordered 80 A380s, and if we didn't do something about transforming the service and operations of the airports, it would be total gridlock. And I think by bringing in expertise to quickly make a difference, we were able to achieve that mission. But I think what we've done in more recent years is the thing that I'm most proud of, and that we have trained up the brightest, the talented, and the most capable local people to make the airport run, for Dubai by people from Dubai who are the best in the business, and to have been able to create training programs for local talent to be the best they can be and to pursue not jobs but careers, so that the Dubai aviation sector can be powered by people from the UAE in the future, I think, is probably the thing that I would like to be regarded as having delivered for Dubai.
Amazing. Time now for a fun round of quick fire questions. The rules are simple. I ask a question, you have 5 seconds to think about it, a 15-second answer, and no overthinking. Is that okay?
Absolutely fine.
And your time starts now. Window or aisle?
Window. Love to see what's outside all the time.
Wonderful. And it hasn't changed since you became CEO of Dubai Airports?
No. First time I got on a plane, wanted a window seat. That's never changed.
Wonderful. The one airport in the world, Paul, other than Dubai, that you secretly benchmark yourself against, and why?
Singapore Changi. They've been very innovative and they've developed infrastructure, retail, and all the things associated with an airport in equal measure, and that's been amazing. Their customer service ethos has been really good.
Bang on. It's my second most favorite airport in the world, even today. A piece of music, Paul, that best captures the feeling of a perfectly running hub. Symphony, jazz, electronic, or something else?
I have to say, I'm a great fan of the French romantic composer Maurice Duruflé, and he wrote a suite, Opus 4, which has got 3 movements, a very complex piece of organ music. I learnt it a few years ago. It took a lot to learn, and I play it reasonably regularly. I'm playing it in New York fairly soon, and it is a very complex piece, but it absolutely perfectly symbolizes the synchronicity between hands, feet, eyes, and it's just an amazing piece. In a big acoustic space, it just sounds incredibly powerful and very well coordinated.
Just like Dubai Airport.
I suppose that must be the case, yes.
Talk of Dubai Airport, the most underrated spot in DXB where you would happily spend an extra 2-hour layover.
There is a swimming pool in the middle of Concourse B, just above the first and business class lounges, and it's a little oasis of calm. And if I miss out doing my swimming at home in the morning and I'm traveling, I sometimes sneak up there and do a few lengths.
Really? I never knew that, actually.
Exactly. Well, you asked for the most, isolated spot where you don't realize you're in an airport. And I think if you're in a swimming pool, that's probably as alien as you can get.
Next time I'm there. One travel habit, Paul, that you wish passengers would give up tomorrow for everyone's sanity.
Taking too much hand baggage on an aeroplane and crowding the overhead bins, that's always a problem. People avoid using the baggage systems and take too much on board. And sometimes when you have to try and go against the flow of customers getting off the aeroplane and walk down the cabin because you could only find a space to put your bag, that's a problem. And it's much, much more prevalent on the low-cost carriers in Europe, where you're not allowed to, unless you pay, to check luggage into the hold. Fortunately, in Dubai, we don't tend to impose that restriction on customers, so it's not a problem here.
Correct. If you could instantly master one emerging technology for airports, AI, biometrics, robotics, which would you pick and why?
I'd pick facial recognition because despite all the concerns about privacy, what that could unlock would be absolutely enormous. It could eliminate all the separate points of processing and make sure that when you walk into the building, you are immediately recognized, you're checked in, your security and immigration profile is dealt with. So it would then facilitate a complete non-stop airport process. We've already got that in immigration and other points. We just need to bring it together so it's one scan that the customer doesn't even see, and that unlocks the entire airport experience without any stopping or very intrusive checking or anything like that. That would be a game changer.
Amazing. A book, Paul, you'd recommend to young leaders in your team?
Losing My Virginity by Richard Branson.
Amazing
A
book.
great boss of mine, and it tells his story about how he refused to accept the status quo and challenged almost every business sector that he entered.
Yes. The most surprising conversation that you ever had in an airport that you can safely share on this podcast?
The most surprising conversation, I think, must go to an airport in the Australian region, which I won't name, where a security guard who was very friendly went through my bag and at the same time chose to sing me a song.
Really?
And that was, "We gotta get out of this place. Is it the last thing we ever do?" And I just thought that was the most ironic but interesting choice of repertoire that he could perform for me.
Oh, interesting. If you're not running airports, Paul, what alternate career would you be tempted to do today? Is it full-time musician, entrepreneur, or something completely different?
I think I would love to be a full-time cathedral organist. I'd love the music and the whole ethos of playing the organ in a large cathedral, and I love accompanying choirs and playing the organ, and that would be my dream, to be, a lowly assistant in a regional cathedral somewhere in the world, and that would be perfection for me in when I give up airporting. Although I love what I do, I love the people, I love the job, but to me, to pursue a dream that I haven't pursued yet, that would be it.
Amazing. Finally, Paul, complete the sentence for me and for our listeners. The future of travel will be more of this and less of this.
The future of travel will be much greater levels of hospitality and enjoyment to bring back the romance into travel, and will be much less about the infrastructure and the alien service culture that unfortunately exists in some airports.
Paul, any last comments for our listeners?
I think the thing is, what I would say, my journey has been a bit unconventional. As I think you said, I trained as a cathedral organist and musician, and I ended up, running the world's largest airport. There's nothing about my career that has been sort of premeditated and planned. It's the series of evaluations of opportunities that have presented themselves to me. And I think what I would say is, if you get an opportunity, think about it seriously, be bold, take it, push yourself, do not accept the status quo, carry the forward momentum through life, reach the highest heights, and never be satisfied that you've reached the limit of your own capability, but be kind, be open, and be collaborative with your peers. And that, I think, is the recipe for a successful career, a successful set of relationships, and a successful life.
Well said, Paul Griffiths.
Money Majlis is brought to you by Saxo Bank, the trusted European bank helping you make better investment decisions.
Money Majlis is brought to you by Network International, the leading digital payments technology company in the Middle East and Africa.
Money Majlis is proudly supported by Aqua Now, the premier crypto as a service provider, now building in partnership with the top financial institutions in the Middle East. Discover more at aquanow.com.
Money Majlis is brought to you by E&, a global technology group.
For listeners, if you enjoyed this conversation, do share it with a fellow traveler, a budding aviator, or that friend who still cuts it too fine getting to the airport. Don't forget to subscribe to Money Majlis on whatever your favorite podcast platform is. And if you want to join my social giving movement, please visit my website moneymajlis.com and redeem your free gift card for a charity of your choice. Money Majlis is conceived and scripted by me, Shubha Sarkar, produced by Sabeen Achkar at Podster, and my giving partner is Ragini Sarkar at Good World. Until the next episode, this is Shubha Sarkar signing off from Dubai. Stay well, travel well, and do good.